Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on. Matthew Stafford is officially available, and this is something that we were actually kind of hitting on throughout the season, Reese. We were talking about, hey, Matthew Stafford, real chance he could become available. Just the Lions, they may mutually, part ways. Beat writers were kind of hinting at it. Obviously, I think the Lions would probably have wished to keep him, but he's officially going to become available. So the real question is, what's his trade value? Unfortunately, guys, I do not see the Bears being able to get him, considering the Lions are a divisional opponent. But his trade value, as far as when we compare it to Watson, that's going to be, much lower. I think that whatever team trades for him, the Lions are probably going to get a first round pick and some change for him. Just mainly because he's been injured quite a bit. There is a little bit of a risk taking him because he's not a known winner. He's a player that's been good, but not awesome for the Lions. And the interesting thing is on Twitter lately, this verified reporter floated out his top 5 teams list, and the Chicago Bears were on it. But again, this dude has had some pretty bad takes lately. And I know a lot of NFL people speculate the Chicago Bears is a potential landing spot. But personally, if he goes through trade, which I imagine he will, I can't imagine that he just gets released outright. It's going to be a tough road to try to convince the Lions to trade him within the division.
Yeah, I figure the Bears would have to definitely at least give up their first, and like you said, I mean, some change, whether or not that's like another third or mid-round draft pick or some kind of player asset. So you're giving up a considerable amount, but basically half or a third as much as you probably have to give up with for Deshaun Watson. He's really interesting.
Bears, here's the thing too, is that the Bears would probably have to overpay significantly to convince the Lions to trade him in the division too.
Yeah, and I forgot which beat reporter I saw made this tweet, but basically saying the Bears should just ask the Lions what do you need for him, or like what do you want, basically just to make sure that they can secure him. And I'm not 100% sold that the Bears should necessarily take that route. I'm not sold myself on Stafford as a Bear. I think that he could really succeed in the position and could take this offense to new heights, but at the same time they would need to make sure that offensive line is secure. And really, if they go for Stafford, I just remember who it was Dave Wanstead, because he was making the comment that the Bears should the Bears should just go into the win now. And, of course, he was someone as a Bears coach, didn't really have the best, track record, didn't really last for too long. Which I'm not really completely sold on that vision. I do think that the Bears have an opportunity. They have some talent where if they wanted to go for the win now mentality, they could. But yeah, I mean, I would say to me, he's one of the least attractive options to me as far as, who's on the quarterback market, but certainly one that's, probably the most affordable at the same time, or one of the more affordable options.
I think that if we're talking about free agents, if it's not Deshaun Watson in a trade, then I think Matthew Stafford for me is my number 2. I just think that, I like to think that the Bears have an opportunity to get him, but just realistically, guys, just like Deshaun Watson, I cannot see him going in the AFC. And while Matthew Stafford is a little bit of a different thing, because as he continues to age, the Lions are going to be in a rebuild probably for the next 3 to 4 years. So by that time, he's going to be like 36, and then you'd only have to deal with him for a little bit longer. And he's not like this game-breaking quarterback. He's a good quarterback. He's well above average. He's borderline. He's probably like top of the top 10, I would say, like closer to like the 10th best or something like that. Personally, right, is where I'd probably rank him. If he had a better team around him, maybe he could do even better. But it just seems like the Lions would do whatever they can to not create any sort of narrative of like where they have to face him 2 times a year and then they beat up on him. And it's just going to look bad on the front office. So, he could, I think that for him, he could potentially go in the NFC somewhere else. I think Washington's an option there. Maybe the Panthers are an option. But I don't necessarily foresee the Chicago Bears.
At least for the Lions, though, if you trade him, you're not going to be seeing him for 10 more years. It's
well, that's the issue with Watson.
It's a smaller window, and they'd have to be maybe they are rebuilding, or you know what, as much as it sucks to have Stafford come in and beat up on us, while we suck, we can afford it for 2 to 3 more years as we become a better team. It's all about what way the Detroit front office wants to look at it. And I think the Bears could be major players in that sweepstakes, and I'd be hard pressed to believe if the Bears came with the best offer that they'd turn them down, though. I think if the Bears present the best offer, they will take it. Honestly, I think at that point, it's just whether or not the Bears, make that competitive of an offer or not. I do think that, optimally the Lions would be, get them out of conference, or, at least get them out of division and get a decent haul back. But I think if the Bears are kind of in just a little bit of a different realm as, what they're getting, maybe the Bears are giving them a first and a third, and every other team's saying, a first and a fifth, or a player whose value would be a fifth or a fourth, maybe they just go, we should just go for the biggest bang for our buck. I could see them taking that kind of route.
I think the Bears would have to overpay, though. I really do think that there would be some overpay component to it. And while I think it still could work out, because I think Matthew Stafford can win a Super Bowl when he's healthy, but at the same time, I do also wonder, I just don't know how much that difference would have to be to overcompensate it. But you're right, the age makes it a completely different thing than the Watson rumors, where pretty much for instance, if the Texans traded Watson to the Colts, they're going to see him for the next 15 years. And that's a completely different situation, And that's why I don't even think Watson gets traded to the AFC. I think he goes to the NFC. I'm still going to predict, I think that Stafford's probably going to land with the Colts. But I thought it was interesting that, even if it's not a, great source, which believe me, it's not. Still a verified guy, but still not a great source. I think it's interesting that the Bears have been tossed around a little bit as far as potentially obtaining Matthew Stafford, because that'd be, Matthew Stafford on this team next year, I think that's a home run. I think that's a huge win at the quarterback position.
It's at least an improvement, and he's not as much of a statue as Nick Foles, and, he kind of does have his odd, weird quirks as a quarterback, with this whole sidearm throwing thing. Sometimes he can kind of get into a rut where he throws some picks. Some games he's a little bit better than others. Always seems like he's always going to get you the yardage. He's probably going to at least get you 2 to 3 touchdowns. He's usually a pretty efficient guy, and you'd have to think that, in Nagy's scheme, he could probably do pretty well. I think that, to me, the biggest sweepstakes of them all is the Watson, but you're probably right. The next best thing could probably be a Matthew Stafford, or I think on the same kind of level as, a guy like Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. I think they're all kind of the same thing.
If we're talking, I would prefer Matthew Stafford just because it would kind of go in the all win now category. So whereas if you take Trey Lance or Zach Wilson, while they may have even a higher ceiling than Matthew Stafford, it's still going to take a couple years for them to probably get there. And then at that time, Khalil Mack's going to be older. Akeem Hicks is going to be ready to retire for sure. So things like that kind of play into it. But I'd be very happy with landing a Zach Wilson or a Trey Lance as well.
Hey guys, like our video, subscribe, and check out our bi-weekly podcast on Apple Podcasts. Thanks.